I'm Mark Driskell, marketing rep in the Southern region. Today we're going to look at the new EASYquote 4 for Annual Forage. If you remember last fall, we came out with this for the PRF quoting. Very neat, cool features that we have available, and I wanted to go through it today for the Annual Forage for 2026. That is the first thing we need to do is make sure we are logged into the 2026 crop year for the annual forage training, and we're now in the dashboard that looks familiar to what you're used to seeing. I am in the demo mode, so it may look just a little bit different than yours to hide some of the information. But the first thing I want to point out is that this EASYquote along the blue ribbon, we don't want to go there. That's going to bring us up the old EASYquote, which will work just fine if that's the one you prefer. Absolutely will still work, but it doesn't have some of the new exciting features that we built in the EASYquote 4. There's a couple of different ways to access that. The first thing we're going to do is go into it as if we're quoting someone brand new, and then later on in the training here, we'll go through how to access it from a existing policy. So we want to go over here under MPCI, and we want to drop this down to the EASYquote 4 version. This top one will take you into the original that is on the blue ribbon there. We want to go into EASYquote 4. And from here, we can see that we only have the option of clicking on Rainfall Index. So we're going to open that up, and it's going to bring us into the attributes box, just like we're used to seeing when we go into any quote. So the first thing we have to do, we've got Kansas already selected. We are going to work in Cheyenne County, but again, drop these down to pick whatever state that you're going to work in and whatever county you're going to work in. So we're going to leave it at Cheyenne County. We're going to pick our crop as annual forage. And then it pre-fills as a rainfall index policy. And over to the right, we're going to be able to select our growing seasons. These are all the growing seasons that are available in Kansas. You'll see we have 1 through 4, but 5 and 6 are skipped. In the prior training that Jeff did on the policy, we know that certain states don't have all growing seasons available. And in Kansas, we can clearly see that 5 and 6 are not available. So the system is smart enough to not let you pick it. So we're going to select our growing season 1. The system will default to 90% coverage level and 150% productivity factor. Now, feel free to change these to whatever you want to use for the quote. I'll show you how you can run some reports to look at some different options without having to go back in and change it every time. The acres will default to 100. Feel free to change those to whatever acres they are, as well as the share percent will default to 100%, and you can change that if it's on a different sharing arrangement. So now that we have that filled in, we need to go down and we need to select our grid. From this drop down, you'll see all the grids that are available in Cheyenne County, Kansas. However, you likely may not know what grid you need to be in. So we've got a lookup feature to the right of this. And if you select that, it's going to bring you into an aerial view, a satellite view of Cheyenne County, Kansas. So we're going to let this pull us in here. And now you'll see Cheyenne County. You'll see all the grids that are available for that county. Now we have some search features that we can use. First, if you know the farm track and field number, maybe you're working off of 578, you have the MPCI policy, whatever it is, you can enter the farm track and field number in, and it will bring you in and show you what grid that is in. You can drop this down, and you can also search by latitude and longitude if you happen to know what that is. Address, this one's very simple. If you have the address, you can enter that in, and it will bring you into that grid, or if you happen to know the township. Now below that, we do have the search features down here. So this is the select grid ID. So once we know the field, we can drop that pin in it to show us the grid. We can also use our pan feature here. So if we select that and we need to move it around a little bit, you can do that. We can zoom in or out. So in this case, let's zoom in and get a little tighter in. So if we select that and then just click on it, it's going to keep bringing it into tighter views. So let's say that we know that the field they're selected is outside of St. Francis here. So let's go in to get to a field view. And the insured said, oh, yes, this is my field over here. So now I know I'm in 23814, but I can take my grid. If I'm not 100% sure where I'm at, I can take my selector here, drop it in the field, and now it's selecting that, and you can see it pre-fills down here what grid I'm in, so you can be sure that you're right. From there, we're going to hit OK. Now it pre-fills that information in. You'll notice down below we have a lot of other information that is filled in for us. So the first thing under the interval elections, we're not going to enter anything in here just yet. I'll show you some of those features here in a moment, but you'll notice down below each interval, it'll show the farmer paid the net premium for that interval. And down below will show what the historical average rainfall is. This is from 1948 to 2024. This is the historic average rainfall for each one of those intervals. Down below that, we get into the historical information. Now, the system's going to default to the last 20 years. I'll show you how to look at 5 and 10 as well, but we can see what the average index is for the last 20 years. We can see what the total indemnity, if we added up all indemnities per acre for 20 years, what that would have totaled up at for each interval. We can see what our rate of return is. So we know anything over a 1.00 rate of return is a profitable rate of return. And we can see how many years this policy would have triggered out of the last 20. So we can see in January, February, for example, it triggered 14 out of 20 years. September, October, February, March, each triggered 11 out of 20 years. Down below that is simply just taking the information that it's using there and showing you what years, what the index was for each one of those years in the last 20. Anything in that red color means that that interval would have paid in that year. Anything that's not highlighted means it simply would not have paid. I can look at this if we want to get into a little more recent times. We can look at this under a 5-year historical, and now you can see we're just looking at the last 5 years, and we can see that in September, October, it's been very dry. The first several intervals, December and January, has been a little bit wetter, and so forth. It readjusts my total indemnity per acre, it readjusts my rates of return and how many years it would have triggered out of the last 5, as well as my information down below. I can look at 10 years just the same way. Again, just more information to help you make your decisions. Now, going back up here to the interval elections, we know that we have to be in at least 3 intervals, and we know they cannot overlap. Depending on what state you're in, other than the Dakotas, you can't put more than 40% in any one interval. In the Dakotas, you can put 50, and there are certain growing seasons in the other states that you can also put 50 in some of the later growing seasons, as you learned in the prior presentation that Jeff did, that we have this 50% override. But for now, we know we need to be in 3, so I've got multiple options here. I can go in and I can put whatever percentage I want in each interval. I can just elect that. It's going to make me get to 100. I put 110. There we go. I'm at 100%. So I can do it that way. So I can do it myself. If I feel like that I want to make the decisions for myself or for my insured, I can do that. But we also have these auto interval features. So odd, if I select odd, it's going to equally distribute as equally as it can for a third of 100% across the board in the odd months. So September, month 9, December, month 11, January, month 1. So the odd intervals, and it just evenly spreads my coverage out across the policy. Even does the same thing, except it goes for the even months and evenly distributes it out across the intervals. Now, the optimizer feature is what I find very good, very resourceful tool that we can use to help us place our coverages where we have the best chance of return based upon the historical information. So when I hit the optimizer and drop it down, you can see it's going to cap it at 50%. We know no matter where we're at, we can't put more than 50% in any one interval. So we can leave that alone, probably more important for PRF than it is for annual forage. But now I can optimize this policy based upon either if I want 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years. So if I just leave it selected at 20 years and hit optimize, it places the coverage in 3 intervals where it feels like the highest rate of return would be at. If we change this to 5 years, it readjusts, and now you can see it puts it in the most recent 5 years where the highest rate of return would be at. So you can use that feature to place your coverage where it's most advantageous for the insured. Great feature. I would strongly recommend at least looking at that. Again, you can do as you or your insured feels, put it where you want, but the optimizer is using the historical information that we've gathered and it's placing the coverage where it would best be utilized. So let's say we want to use that. We're going to go down below and click Save. And now it's going to bring us into a full farm view like we're used to seeing before. So here are my intervals that I've got elected. I've got my percentages of value there. It's giving me my coverages, my guarantee, my gross and net premium. Over to the right, it's giving me my summary. I've got 100 acres. Coverage is $46,737 with a net premium of $56.97. Now let's assume that the insured has another growing season he wants to insure ground in. Maybe he's got another grid. To add to this quote, I simply go up here to the big plus sign, hit add. It brings me back into the attributes box like I seen before. And I can simply do what we did before, annual forage, rainfall, except now I'm going to pick growing season 2. By growing season, I can change my coverage level. So maybe I want to put this growing season for whatever reason at 85%, and I want to put 120% productivity factor in there. I can do that. I can also change my acres if I need to. Maybe I know that I've got 200 acres in this growing season I'm planning. I can change my share percentages if I want. I'm just going to select another grid ID. We could use the search feature if we needed to. Now it's giving me all that historical information. I'm going to go in and optimize it over the last 5 years, let the computer do the work. There it places my coverage in 3 different intervals. I can select save. And there I've got my other growing season added. Now, in the prior policy information presentation that Jeff did, he talked about dual use coverage. If you know you have dual use acres and you want to know what the coverage would drop to, because we know we're only getting 40% of the county base value, we can do that from the quote. So I could go in here to this growing season 2, and if I know it's going to be dual use, I could simply double click on my top line, my October-November interval, and under acres, over here to the right is if you hover over, it says enter acres by dual use. If I open that up and go down to the middle here and hit dual use, and let's assume it's on all 200 acres, and hit save, then go down and hit save, you'll notice over here on the right, it went down to $74,988. It reduced my county-based value to 40% for the dual use option. So now I can give an accurate quote based upon the dual use acres and what the coverage would be. If I open this top line back up, if I want to go into that dual use acres box again, uncheck dual use and hit save. Over here on the far right, where my $74,988 is, once I hit save and I've no longer elected dual use and hit save once again at the bottom, you'll see my coverage now went back up to $117,360, which is 100% of the county base value. So an easy way to look at dual use coverages. So now that we have our quote built, let's look at some different reports that we can run and share those with the insured or to print those off. So up here at the very top, we're under the home icon now. Let's go to documents. One thing when you come in here, if you didn't do any work, you're going to have it's going to be elected like this. It's not going to show you any one interval. And you'll notice my historical index report here, it now is grayed out. So make sure when you come in here, just elect any one of the intervals. If you just turn that line blue just by clicking on it once, now you'll see you have the index history report that's going to be available. So we'll show that. But under the full farm report, we have our standard full farm report that we can run just like we look at on MPCI. We can look at the coverage level that we have elected only. I can do one up or down. I can select any custom range I want to. And when I click OK, it generates a report that shows me at 80%, 85 or 90% coverage level, what my per acre coverage is, the total, the premium per acre. It does that. Excuse me, it does that for each growing season, each interval I have elected, and it gives me the totals and averages down at the bottom. So that is the full farm report. From here, I could save it, email it, print it, do whatever you need to do with that quote. We also have the option of the full farm product summary. I could print the summary page off only if I wanted by electing that, but we'll leave that unchecked for now. And the full farm product summary breaks it down. Again, it gives me the intervals that I've elected, not just the totals. And it gives me just a little more breakdown, a summary of what I've elected for both growing seasons and intervals, coverages, percentages, and those type of things. And then again, it totals it at the bottom. So it gives you just a little more breakdown what the full farm quote does. I also have the productivity factor comparison report that I can run. So we know on the one that we elected 100% or 120%, the other one we elected 150%. Well, how can I easily look at these different productivity factors without having to go back in and change it each and every time? So we're just going to leave the coverage level that we have, but we're going to stair step the productivity factors from 100 to 150. And you can change that if you want to. It will only look at so many at once, so you may have to run it twice. But we're going to look at 100 to 150% productivity factor in 10% increments. And now it shows you at 100%, my coverage would be $311.58, premium of $37.98, up to the maximum that I had elected of $467.37 with a premium of $56.97. So just an easy way to show the differences in productivity factors. We also, the index history report, this basically is showing that first information from the attribute screen. It shows me what my net premium is for each interval in that growing season. It shows me what the rate of return is, the average index, basically everything from that history. And then I can go down below and I look at all that historical data, just like we seen on that first page. So I can look at it, show him the history report or her the history report of what these intervals and how they performed previously did. So that's a nice report to run, just like I said, it's just giving you that historical information. But again, if you see that grayed out, just like now when I deselected any one interval, it's no longer there. But no matter what interval I pick, as soon as I select that, the index history report will be there. Okay, so from here, if we go back to our home screen, the application is here. I'm going to show you in a moment here. If you want to go in and generate the application, pre-fill it with the grid IDs, growing seasons, coverage levels, those type of things, you can do it from here. I think it may be easier to do it once we create a temp policy, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. But the MPCI application is an option to do from here, and when I select that, it is just bringing me into a policy transfer application form. You could print that off, fill in the rest of it. You can pre-fill up some of here, but again, it's got everything that we've elected on here. So that is one option, but I'll show you a little easier way to do it in my opinion. So let's go back to our home screen and let's look at one more historical feature that we have. So over here about halfway up towards the top, you're going to see historical index. And if we select that, I have February and March highlighted over here, as you can see. So what I'm looking at on the left side of this historical index is just February and March and how it performed 5, 10, and 20 years, rates of return, and it shows me down through here every year for the last 20 years that I have elected. Over on the right-hand side, this is how the entire policy, both grids, both growing seasons, how the entire policy would have reacted in any of those previous years. Why is this important? So we run a quote for somebody who's not had an annual forage policy before, and they go, hey, how would this have paid in 2022, for example, if I'd have bought that then? We're just going to backcast using today's county-based values, premiums, all those things from today, but we're going to look at it as if we had this policy in 2022. So if I elect that, hit apply, over on the right-hand side now, I can see in 2022, this policy would have paid $61,396 for a rate of return of $4.64. I can compare this to any year in the past. Maybe I want to go to 2016, for example. In 2016, the policy would have paid $22,397 for a rate of return of $1.69. So you can go through and show them as many years as you want to show them how a policy would have reacted in that given year. So that is a very nice feature, and I do like to utilize that a lot. So we'll just cancel out of here. We're just going to clear the historical index. From here, if you wanted to do that application like I showed you previously, you could add the policyholder information in right here, person type, put all that in there. It will pre-fill that onto the application as well as the agent information. But if I was done with this policy, wanted to create a temp policy to be able to set it active, I would simply select create temp policy. And there it brings me into EasyWriter Pro to the temp policy version. I can enter all my information in, go through, fill all this out. You would go down, apply and add coverages. It would bring those coverages in, and then you could print off an application from there that's already pre-filled out. Everything's already into EasyWriter Pro, so you just did it once, and then printed the application off from there. So a very easy way to create a temp policy from doing Annual Forage. Now that quote is done. If I needed to add another quote, if I was working with another policy holder, I could go up here to the top left, this little plus sign over the paper icon. This would just open up another brand new quote. But the folder next to this, if I'm working on an existing policy holder, somebody I already have a policy for, but maybe I want to go in and utilize the new optimizer features. So if I select that folder icon, it's going to show you the most recent policies you've worked with. This is the policy I'm going to go into. But if I just selected policy quote search, now it's going to let me put in that policy number here. Brings me to Joe Farmer's policy. Double click it. And now it's going to bring me in last year's Annual Forage policy. So now I can start working on a quote from it. Now we can see in growing season 1, they didn't have any acres added last year. Maybe they're going to have acres in growing season 1 this year. So I would just double click this top line to bring me into the attributes box. And I'm going to put in 100 acres. Again, if I needed to utilize the dual use feature, I could do so from here. I will hit save. And now it's added acres to that grid. If I needed to add a new growing season, add a different grid ID, I could do that with my add feature up here. But for today's presentation, let's look at the new optimizer feature. Keep in mind over here, we've got a net premium of a little over $22,000 with $168,000 worth of coverage. So I'm going to go in again, I'm going to double click and open up that line, and I'm going to use the optimizer feature. And I'm going to look at 5 years, hit optimize, and save it. And then I'm going to go down to my next grid. 5 years, optimize, and save. And then my next growing season, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to do a 5-year optimizer and save. You can see it changed some percentages there. And now I can see I've changed just a little bit over here. I'm just a little bit more premium and just a little bit more coverage over there. So just utilizing this policy was set up very good last year, but just utilizing that 5-year, and you could look at 10 or look at 20, but utilizing an optimizer feature to make sure that we're utilizing the policy to its fullest potential. So I've made those changes there. And now I could simply go in if I needed to add a grid, add a different growing season, coverage levels by growing season, whatever it may be, I would add that here. But then when I hit this update policy, it's going to update this policy with the changes I've made in the quoter into EasyWriter Pro. So if I was to hit yes from here, it would update this into EasyWriter Pro, thus doing the work for you there so you don't have to do it twice, which is a wonderful feature. We'll just cancel out of there for now, but that is how to quote from an existing policy. So I mentioned earlier that we could look at the EASYquote from a policy. Again, I did it from here. When I close out here, it's going to ask me if I want to save. I'm just going to hit discard. I'm going to do the same thing here and just close out here because I don't want to save them. Close out of the quoter, and now I'm back to the dashboard. To access EASYquote from a policy, I would go up again to MPCI, View Policy, and I'm going to type in my Joe Farmer policy. There it is, and when I open this up, it's going to bring me into the policy information. And now over on this upper right-hand side, you're going to see EASYquote. You only see one icon. It does not say EASYquote for it, just says EASYquote. The system knows we're in a rainfall policy. And when I open that up, It's going to take me just where I was at before into that current Joe Farmer policy. And I can do just like I did before from the quote. So a couple of ways to get into a EASYquote for policy. Again, if you go to the dashboard and to the blue ribbon, it's going to take you into the old version. Again, that does work, but to utilize all the new features of EASYquote 4 that I've showed you today, go to MPCI, EASYquote 4, or go into the current policy and select EASYquote from over on the far upper right-hand side, and you will be in there. With that, that concludes today's training presentation. As always, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your marketer. Be happy to walk you through, come to your office and help you with it. But thank you for viewing in, and thank you for choosing NAU.